Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Well, Monday here in the States, Tuesday in Australia. And welcome to another episode of Led by Life. We're your hosts. I'm Rafaela, and this is Hannah. And if you're new to the podcast, both Hannah and I are manifestors in human design, and that's actually how we came to meet one another and have created this podcast out of a desire to have deeper conversations around human design, around the gene keys, and ultimately just around the human experience. So today we're getting into gene key 9, gate 9, and let's get started.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah.
It's our 10th episode, Rafa.
Is it? Is this one the 10th?
This is the 10th because the first one was an introduction, so we
Yeah.
didn't explore any of the gene keys, but
Wow.
yeah, happy 10.
Happy 10. Happy New Year. Happy fall, spring if you're up in the
Happy
north.
astrological new year. Is
Yes, that's what I
that what you
meant.
mean?
Yeah.
I was like, it's March, Rafa.
Okay, well, in
Happy
another reality, it's New Year.
spring,
Yeah.
spring for you, autumn for me. Happy new.
Happy New, yeah. I did not think that I was in it's been a while since I've like said happy day, whatever day it is, um but I do remember like through college there were 2 days specifically where I had like really awesome classes and I'd be so excited for them. And it's so interesting because most of the things that I've done since, including this podcast for me again, it's on a Monday. And in
Mm,
college these classes were either on a Monday or Wednesday. And how we met in our circuitry workshop was on a Monday.
yes.
There's something cool about just doing something fun on a Monday.
I love Mondays. I feel like, I mean, so many people hate Mondays because they hate their jobs,
Yeah.
which is, I get it. I've been there. But I love Mondays now. Mondays are my favorite day of the week.
Mm,
One of my favorites. Yeah.
yeah. Now that I think about it, I actually have never really quote unquote worked, not, can't say never, but I haven't had very many schedules that have had work on a Monday. Even
Mm,
now, I create my own schedule, and if I have to see somebody, I will schedule on a Monday. Like if they really need it, if it fits with the schedule of the week or whatever. But not working on a Monday is amazing.
mm. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I do the same. Like I kind of create my own schedule now, but yeah, it's something, and this is kind of relating to what we were talking about before about like recognizing ourselves and recognizing how far we've come. I have to sometimes pinch myself because Monday morning, Alex, my husband, and I go out for a walk and we buy ourselves a coffee, we treat ourselves, and we go for a really nice big walk and we talk about our plans for the week and we talk about what projects we're working on. And it's just become a really nice tradition for us. And you see all the cars, like all the traffic as we're walking along the street, everyone's heading to work, everyone's rushing and stressed. And I really have to pinch myself sometimes and be like, I'm living my dream now. Like,
Yeah.
sure, I'm not exactly where I want to be, but also recognizing like how much my life has changed because I used to be one of those people rushing in traffic or rushing off to work on a Monday morning. And yeah, it's just really nice to see how far you've come sometimes.
Yeah. Which you're right, may very much well lead to like a lot of what we talk about today. Which you mentioned that you actually ended up really enjoying reading this one. And I wanted to ask you, like, how come?
Yeah. So we're up to the ninth gene key, which is the shadow of inertia, which I've never really used that word. So I didn't really even know what inertia means, but I think it's like inability to make change or to move things forward. So I suppose like getting stuck in cycles or going around in circles, maybe a little bit. I might be not explaining that all that well, but that was kind of the understanding I got from reading it. The gift is determination. And the Siddhi, the highest expression, is invincibility. And then in human design, this is the gate of it's completely blanked from my mind. What is it? The gate of focus.
Yeah.
Focus. Yeah. So maybe that's part of why I like it, because so much of like the work, and I know we've talked about this so much with all of the gene keys so far. I'm really seeing this thread, this kind of through line of presence and mindfulness, and I suppose the ability to be and be with whatever's present. So maybe that's why it resonates with me, this idea of focus, and then also like focusing on what's in front of you, because that's a lot about what he talks about in this chapter, is like the small steps, focusing on just what's right in front of you, which really is what I think so much of mindfulness is all about, just being present with what is and attending to what is. And so maybe that's why it really resonates. I think another reason is that I have this, and I'm still yet to kind of figure out where it is in my human design chart, but I definitely have this perseverance within me, this really perseverant kind of spirit. And, maybe it's this channel of initiation where I'm going through these things that are just kind of like knocking me down constantly. And my spirit's just like, come on, we've got this. We can keep going. And then maybe it's also this, I think my, in the root, I've got the 54th, I think, is like all about drive. So perhaps there's similar energies, which is maybe why I really enjoyed reading this. But I was saying to you, I sent you a voice note yesterday saying, I don't know why, but I feel so much less motivated to read the chapters that I don't have defined in my chart. And possibly because I have a very self-focused energy. Like so much of my design is all about introspection, the 2-5, being in my own world, also being a manifestor. We very much are kind of in our own worlds. And, I have the 10th gate, which is the shadow frequency is self-obsession. So I can find myself becoming a little bit self-obsessed, and that's something that I'm becoming aware of. But yeah, I think what I was trying to say is generally I feel less connected to the ones that I don't have defined in my chart, whereas this one I was like, wow, I love this. I just loved reading it.
Yeah, that's why I was curious as to like when you said that, because I do remember that voice note you sent me of feeling a little less connected. And it's interesting because I feel like what happens when we just go ahead and like read the chapter, for the ones where we don't have the definition, I feel like sometimes we connect because rather than it being like a consistent thing in our life, it is more so of something that we have like ebbed and flowed with, meaning like the like learning there's learning in all of it, right? But the learning process that goes with the areas of the chart that are white, that are undefined, like I wonder if that's why for the root, right, you have like sort of you do have activations in it. And I was actually just looking at both of our charts. I was like comparing them because this is in the understanding collective circuit. And so you and I actually make up 1, 2, 3, like 3 different channels in this circuit.
Oh, Can you explain that to me? I'm going to grab my chart and have a
Yeah.
look at it.
So if you're listening in, and you'd like to do the same to kind of follow along with Hannah and I, you can pull up your human design chart. Yep, it looked like that. And here um I'll have to look at it this way. So it starts, or I don't know where it starts and ends, but if you are looking at your chart and you're in the head center and you're going 63, so it goes 63 4, and then you cross over, and then you're in the ajna, you go down to the throat, 1762. And then we're going to go to, sorry, 1762, right? And so then we're going to go to the 16th gate, which Hannah has defined.
Yeah.
And then I have the 48th gate. So
Yeah.
there we make up one channel. And then you keep going down to the bottom where you reach the spleen and the root, which I have the 18th and Hannah has the 58th. And so then you're going to come back up through the root into the sacral and meet the 52-9, which is what we're talking about today.
Yes.
And then go diagonal into the sacral from the 5 to the 15th, which Hannah and I make up. I have the 5th and she has the 15th. To close it out, and you keep going up to the 7th, the 7 and the 31, which Hannah has the 31, but I don't have the 7.
Wow. And then it finishes there at the 31st gate in the
Yeah,
throat. So interesting. Okay, I hadn't. So that's the understanding circuit.
that's the understanding logical circuit. Yes. So that's, it makes sense as to why when like thinking back to the 5th, right? And I was thinking about routines, and there's a part in where Richard read in this chapter, he says the 9th shadow is about where you place that focus, and primarily through your daily activity rather than your mind. And I was thinking about how there is, if you bring in the gene keys and then the human design system, there's such a very unique blend of how they complement one another. And that's why I love going back and forth between the both of them, because you can't really have one without the other. Because again, there's something about like, there's a commonality in this, in these gates, whether we're talking about the 5th or we're talking about the 9th here, or the 53rd, whichever one it meets, because it is in this collective understanding circuit. So for me, it almost embodies a quality of knowing that I can't really even explain to you. It's like one of those things where I can see how the logic in some of these more mystical energies, they come about because, when we're talking about here, the 9th, like this, you were saying to me earlier, like the focus of, what were you saying? Maybe you should say it because I don't really remember.
Was it when I was talking about the whole channel?
Yes.
So I had a quick glance at the rest of the channel. So this is the channel of concentration, the 52-9. So we've got the 9 in the sacral center, which goes up to meet which goes down, sorry, to meet the 52nd in the root. That's correct? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the 9th is all about focus, and the 52nd is about stillness. And so reading the channel, I kind of got this sense that we need both. We need the ability to focus on each step in front of us, but we also need the ability to be still, so that the action that we're taking, so the stillness is like inaction. So we need both. We need action and we need inaction, because the stillness is what then makes way for more aligned action. That was kind of how I interpreted it. So we're not just like taking action. It's like, pause. Okay, is the direction correct? All right, then we take action. That was kind of how I interpreted it. And I'm just seeing this so often, is people's inability to be still. people's inability to pause, to reflect, to assess things before taking action. And so maybe I'm going a little bit off track here because we are focusing today on the 9th, but yeah, I just feel like that's something it's a real shadow, I think, in society.
Well, if you take that same concept you just shared, but bring it to more of like, not maybe so I hear it and relate it to the 9th as like people's inability to really know what is for them to engage in. You know, he talks about like your daily mundane practices can never be unfulfilling if they lead you to your dreams.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
cooking and cleaning and um and I don't know what else he said, cooking and cleaning, maybe bathing, right? But like these are like the mundane practices. And this kind of leads into the I Ching description. I believe it's the I Ching description of like the power of the small.
Yes.
Do I
Yep.
have that correct?
The taming, the taming power of the small. Yeah.
Yeah.
Refers to the human tendency to become submerged in unnecessary and irrelevant details. And I love what you said, like, um, you know, maybe repeat what you said about it's not, how can it be unfulfilling if it's leading you
To your dreams, which is what, Richard Rudd says. And um, yeah.
Well, we talked about this recently, didn't we? Like people, how often we don't see value in the mundane.
Mm-hmm,
We don't see value in those small things,
mm-hmm,
those small steps, or even just the small joys of life.
mm-hmm.
We always want to be where we're not, or we want things to be bigger, or we're tied to expectation. We're so tied to
Mm-hmm.
outcomes and expectations. And I think he talks about this. I feel like he talked a bit about expectations. Maybe let's talk about the shadow first before we get into the gift. But yeah, is there anything else you wanted to share first?
Well, I was thinking about how this relates exactly to what I had shared. I shared with Hannah before we started today of this realization that I was participating in, I have been participating in a business coaching program. And there's, you have to do these daily practices, which I'm all about daily practices. But I was doing one in particular that about 4 weeks in, I was like, this isn't really what I'm connected to. This is probably me paying attention to an irrelevant detail that's on my path, because maybe I was just doing it because who knows, like maybe I thought that it was going to lead to an immediate result. And I just, at one point I was like, this is not what I need to be focused on right now. Like this particular practice is just not what I need. And so I stopped and I changed up that last practice. And ultimately, I felt just like really relieved and a little bit more engaged with the whole process to do something that, while mundane, still, or just a simple thing, ultimately fulfilled me a lot more.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like that energy of banging your head against a wall, like you're just doing something and it's not actually leading to anything, and you're just doing it because you feel like you should be doing it, or because
Yeah.
it works for someone else. And like this is really everything, right? Like we see so much messaging online or everywhere in the personal growth and development world about like all these different things to be doing, but if they're not actually working for you, or they're actually not actually fulfilling you, then they're not really achieving anything, right?
Yeah.
But then how do we determine what is moving the needle forward? What is actually, because he does talk about this a lot, these small steps, these that are leading in the right direction and not taking us around in a circle, but kind of moving us forward. So how then do we determine? Do you think it comes down to strategy and authority? Do you think it's that simple? Like for us, what do we want to be doing as ego manifestors? Do you think that's the sign? Yeah.
For us, yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think that we really shouldn't be us speaking like manifestors. Yeah, manifestors in human design. From what I've learned and what I've experienced, if we don't want to do it, we really shouldn't do it. And I've battled a little bit with this. This is what I'll say, because I can do something that I don't necessarily want to do, but let's say it's in relation to like another person. But part of me also wants to like make that person happy. And it's interesting because I'm thinking about our conversation before we started. But in like an aligned way, in like a correct way, right? Like if my partner wants to go, to the beach or something, and maybe I don't want to go that day, but he's in a feeling of like, it would really make him happy in that moment for me to go. It doesn't mean that I'm never going to go to the beach with him if I don't want to go. Like, that's just, it's not dogmatic or black or white like that. But to bring it back to like the practices, like when it's just really about us, then yeah, I feel like if I don't want to do that thing, then I don't need to do that thing.
Yeah. And even doubly so for us as ego manifestors, like that's our authority. We haven't really talked much about authority yet on the podcast, but this is like what can help us to make decisions. And we are both, Rafa and I are both ego manifestors. So not only are we manifestors who are meant to just kind of do what we want, we're also ego manifestors who our correct decisions are based on our wants or what our desires are. But like you said, sometimes it can be a little more nuanced because I've had something come up and, we were talking about people pleasing before we hit record, before we got on here. And it's funny because I noticed, and I was talking to Nikki, I had a session with our human design teacher, Nikki, on the weekend, and we were talking about this, and I said how like I do have this desire to want to help people. I have a fifth line, like that is part of how my energy works. Like people project that I can help them, and I also like helping people. But I'm starting to see the difference between actually really wanting to, for example, spend time with someone or to help someone with a problem, or whether it's just that feeling like I need to, or getting something from them. It validates something in me because I have that kind of fifth line projection that I can help people with things. And, it's something that I didn't realize that I really do struggle with, is people pleasing. So anyway, it's a little off topic from this, but it also kind of relates. But I think I wanted to say is it's like keeping this bigger vision in mind, because how do we, so this might actually be a really good example, because I've had a couple of friends that I've been helping on an individual level, but the fifth line is actually not designed to help people on an individual level. Sure, I can do that, and that's a beautiful thing. And for the people who are in my close circle, I think it's really nice to be able to help people out when they're going through hard times. But the fifth line is transpersonal. It's meant to impact people on an impersonal scale, on a bigger scale. That's my understanding. Again, so I'm no expert here in human design, but the fifth line is actually meant to help on a bigger scale rather than like on a one-to-one kind of level. So perhaps actually it's me identifying this pattern, maybe getting stuck in this cycle of people pleasing or helping people because I feel like I need to, or because it validates this part of me that feels like I'm needed, or it feels like I'm helping people, or I'm a good person, rather than actually having this bigger awareness, taking a step back and having this bigger awareness that me focusing my energy, and again, focus, like this being the gate of focus, focusing on things that aren't actually really what I'm here to do. I'm not here to be solving each and everyone's problems. I'm here to be like doing what I'm here to do, which I'm still kind of on the path to discover. But having this awareness of the fifth line not designed to be so personal, perhaps that can help me to decide which things I help with, or where I should be focusing my energy.
Yeah. Well, I want to share with you that, okay, so like we've been talking about the ninth, and the ninth gate is located in the sacral center. And some of the areas of life that are present here when we're talking about the sacral center and human design are things like vital energy, your life force, availability, and the not self theme, which we really haven't talked much about at all. But the not self theme for the sacral center is not knowing when enough is enough, and you have a completely open sacral center.
Yeah.
And when I
So,
think about like, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was
I'd
just gonna
love to
say,
hear.
so when I think about like what you just shared, um, I think it relates to maybe a lot of people, right? Where are we giving our availability to people, places, or things out of some shadow aspect, maybe like something that's not really serving us, but maybe at one point in our life was meant to be there to protect us. And so we've cultivated a relationship with this behavior or this pattern. And then it gets hard to figure out, like, all right, when am I like not cutting that off, or maybe just becoming more aware of like my boundaries with it. And I don't mean like boundaries in the term we all know. I mean literally like, I mean this more on like a physical level of like your aura and your space, right? Whereas the distance that I'm putting between me and this thing, physically more so than any other kind of way is what I'm talking about. But yeah, I just, that's kind of like what I heard from what you were sharing.
I think you're absolutely right. And when I think about specific examples, like I was trying to help a friend the other day who just didn't want to be helped. Like I
Yeah.
know that she needed help, and I know I had all the answers. I know I had, like, not to sound arrogant, but I know what could help her pull her out of that situation. But she was so committed to being the victim of that situation, and I just couldn't. Nothing I said was going to get through. And this is, I guess, where the projected energy is such a gift, because when it's invited out, then it can be fully received. But if I'm like seeing people's problems and trying to fix them, but they're not actually open to receiving that support, it's not going to land. It's not going to have an impact. So that's where I'm focusing my attention and my energy on things that are not actually making a difference, focusing on those minute details that are not really part of the bigger vision.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So to bring it back to like where we had started with this being the shadow, I think, how to maybe tie it in really beautifully is this not self theme is here for a reason, right? It gives us like a bigger understanding to maybe the shadow. Like I feel like it's a pathway to any individual shadow that's present in whatever center that you have open. And so when I'm thinking about like this ninth gate, I wonder, because I don't really entirely remember, so you'll have to remind me if you do. But when when are we spending too much time engaging with a particular detail or expectation or outcome that is really not the detail that we need to be paying attention to? Sort of back to my example of like engaging in a daily practice that I was hoping the end result was just going to come to me. Like doing this thing, I was going I'll just share with you, it was a prosperity meditation. And I was thinking like, all right, prosperity is going to come my way. And, if I really all the way back, in many ways it did. But ultimately that practice itself, I don't think it was that practice itself that was creating those moments of prosperity, in or abundance in like those 6 weeks that I was doing this thing. I think it was something else, because I stopped that meditation, a little over halfway through, and my experiences of abundance or prosperity, or those things that I was hoping to get, kept coming.
Mm. Yeah. So how do we break out of the cycles then? Because he talks about the most energy being required at the start to kind of break those cycles, to break those patterns. Because once you break out of that, I just keep thinking of a circle, like a cycle. And he talks about, well, let's see if we can find it here. Do you remember he was talking about like the stepping stones? Here we go. An image representing both the ninth shadow and the ninth gift is of a pathway made of individual stepping stones. At the frequency of the ninth shadow, the stepping stones go in a circle, so that as you look down each step, you fail to realize that you are simply following the same old footprints and your energy is going nowhere. This is the state of consciousness of the majority of human beings. At the gift level, however, the stepping stones go off into the distance and over the horizon. You do not know where they are going, but it doesn't matter. You know they are leading you forward. This makes every step you take all important, as well as an adventure.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about how he also refers to the gift, or is it the Siddhi, as being like magic? Like it's a magical act.
Yes. Every intentional act is a magical act.
Right. So maybe there is some truth in our intention behind what we're doing, right? So if we're going in a circle, my opinion, like if we're going in a circle, we're not really maybe totally present or intentful. Maybe, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for.
Intentional. Yeah.
Intentional.
I know
I
what you
make
mean.
up words. I make up words. So just know, because whatever. I do it in Spanish too. In Spanish, I say words, and my grandma looks at me, she goes, "What?" And I'm like,
I love that about you, Rafa.
One day I might have my own language.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, so what's the word?
So like intentional, do you mean?
Intentional, right.
Yeah.
I think that that's one way, right, that we break out of like going around and around.
So I'm going to ask you another question then. How do we connect with our intentions? Because then I have an understanding of what moving forward with intention means to me, but what does that look like to you?
It's really so beautifully synchronistic how this is coming up, because I was listening to a podcast earlier and they were having this conversation around intention, like the intention. And I thought, that's an interesting conversation. I wonder if Hannah and I have ever had that conversation, or if we will. Literally, that was today. Here we are. For me, and I've had actually like a little like grayness around intention, because when I started having a meditation practice and I learned about intention, I'd be like, all right, my intention today is to simply be, or it would be to be present, and like forever and ever and ever, it was to be present, to be present, to be present, to be mindful, to be mindful. Like it was just the same thing over and over. And I hear some people, and when they just share their intention about something, and I feel like it's so elegant and it's so wonderful and beautifully said. And sometimes for me, it's really simple sometimes it can be just like, I want to feel good. That's my intention. I just want to feel good. I mean, my intentions seem to be very short. Like, I want to feel good in this thing, or I want there to be love present. That's one I've used often. Or I want to be connected to spirit source in this. Like for me, to answer your question, like intention is bringing the meaning behind what I'm doing.
Mm.
It's giving it
And
meaning.
yeah, yeah. And so for anyone finding themselves in cycles or circles or patterns that perhaps they're recognizing aren't really serving them and aren't moving their lives forward, how could they then start to connect to a greater intention? Because what's coming to mind for me is like values, getting
Mhm.
clearer on what's important to you, what you value. It's not even about necessarily having like this grand vision or this clear outcome in mind, because I almost think it's the opposite of that. It's like letting go of the outcome, but opening yourself up to something that's greater than what you're experiencing right now.
Mhm.
And so, how do we kind of find some sort of way out and some sort of direction forward?
Something just keeps coming up for me about meaning,
Mm-hmm.
like bringing the meaning to what you're doing. Maybe that means taking a step back and like maybe asking yourself some questions around this like thing that you're doing that's really not leading you anywhere. You're not going, you're not like, nothing's really happening with this thing. And I think that's your first sign. Like, if you feel like you're engaging in something and there's like back to like what this sacral center is all about, like this life force, if it's not giving you a sense of life force, then why do it? I don't, like doing that meditation wasn't really making me feel more connected. It was like I just felt it. It felt like I was just doing it to do it. And that's part of this sacral center, is this generator energy. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in the world who are probably just doing things for the sake of either doing them or because somebody else told them to do these things. And they're at some point realize like, I'm stressed and I'm burnt out, or I'm really super fatigued or tired, or just like unavailable for things. And I'd be like, well, what are you doing with your day? Like what are you doing? Like, I was sharing with you before we got here today, like I feel like I'm in this period of my life where I feel very high energy. Like I feel like I'm going, 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 going. And right now, maybe this is sort of like back to like last week. Hannah asked me what season do I thrive in. And sorry if you heard my FaceTime go off.
Oh, I didn't hear it. No.
My mom's FaceTiming me.
Hey,
But
Mom.
I
You were talking about
I had I have you asked me last week,
your season.
my
Yes.
season. And then since then I kind of had this like thought, like, I think it's spring. I
Mm.
think spring's the time where I get really like revved up. If you guys know your astrological suns, your big three, I have Aries is my moon and my rising. And I'm a Sagittarius sun, and all three of these are fire signs. And so we're entering like a fire season. So I get really like revved up in this season.
Mm.
And it's a little warmer, but it's not really hot. So it's just being outside in North Florida, it's just so, it's so nice. But anyway, I'm going off on a little tangent here. My point is that I feel right now like the things that I'm actually doing are moving the needle bigger. And it's when I like sort of stepped out and realized like I need to stop doing things just for the sake of trying to force something to happen. That's something like I came to in the last couple of weeks, is like, and what I was sharing with Hannah before this is like, I forget to take a step back and realize like I have been creating, doing, being of service. I have been doing these things, and I get caught up, in my own beliefs or in my mind, or, you know, as Hannah reflected back to me, and many other people reflect back to me as a 2-4, maybe not always seeing it, although I know it. I'm too hard on myself. I'm like, and I like feel like I got to do all these things, and I don't realize that like that's sometimes what's actually weighing me down. But right now, the things that I'm doing, I feel like I'm getting like energized by them. Like I'm just like, I'm ready to go. Like I go to sleep and I'm like, ooh, what's the magic of tomorrow gonna bring? And I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. And then, I have a day like yesterday where I'm like, I can't do anything. I can't think about anything. And I didn't.
I love that. And I think this is where the sacral can teach us the importance of rest as well, like the importance of both. In order to be able to fully take action and take aligned action, we also need to allow ourselves rest, and we need to have these seasons where we take a step back and we aren't doing so much. And I feel like that's kind of what you were doing before in your previous season, was a little bit of a preparation for what's to come now. And like you say, you feel like you're in your season, you're in it. And I feel the same. Like it's not spring here, it's autumn, but I really feel like I thrive in this weather. It's starting to get a bit cooler. I'm not someone who enjoys the heat, so I feel like I work better, I feel more inspired. And I feel the same around spring as well. Like autumn and spring, these kind of in between seasons are really where I feel like I thrive, because yeah, it's just, I don't know, my energy likes it. And yeah, but to your point, like we need both. We need, and I feel like this is what the sacral is here to teach us in a way.
I want to share something of how this, maybe we'll get to it. I'll find it. It's when I was reading in the human design book. It's probably not called this human design book, but Hannah and I reference this one as the human design book. Just so anybody knows, that's what we're talking about. That's the name I've given it. Back to like this focus. You'll have to, here it is. So it says something about being able to, the capacity, you focus your attention for long periods of time on the detailed aspects of a project or issue and properly test or assess the formulas. And I feel like this is what happens when maybe somebody may not have the ninth gate defined for them, because I'll notice like I'm not going to sit for long periods of time and focus on something. And I've been having this conversation to a greater degree with something a little different from a lot of what we're talking about right now, which is the experience of women with ADHD who think that they, after hearing a lot of testimonials and experiences of other women and talking to doctors or getting information, however they're getting it, feel as if they're identifying a lot more with possibly having the symptoms of ADHD, but it just presents differently because they're women, which I could see it being true for them. But I don't really know how all of that relates to this. I just know that that's what makes me think about this, because I don't sit for very long periods of time and do something. Like my energy for me is spurts. I don't know if it's like that for you, but I get these like spurts of energy to do something, and then I I stop, and I have to
Mm,
like go away and maybe come back like I don't know when. Sometimes I won't even finish it. But does that mean like I have an inability to complete task, or does that mean that I am not focused enough, or that procrastinating? Like, I don't know. And I just think that like no, it doesn't. I feel like everybody sort of works a little differently. They use their life force energy a little differently. We all do. And it's okay if you're not sitting there for 5 hours at a time doing one thing or working, right? Like I
mm,
think that that's okay. Um I just wanted to share that because I think when it comes to, a lot of the ways in which people use their energy and how they focus on things, there can also be a lot of conditioning around the way in which they're supposed to work, or the way in which you're supposed to do things, back to some of the things we're talking about now. And it's like, no, sometimes it's just different for somebody else, and that can be
mm.
okay. So I told somebody recently, I was like, what if you just shared with yourself that that thing that you were going to do, you were going to do it at that latest time, because um that's when you know you were going to get it done. Like some people were like, I'll like leave certain things at the last minute. And I get there's subtleties in what I'm talking about, so take what resonates and don't if it doesn't. But I shared, I was like, what if you changed like your thought around it? What if you said, I'm not procrastinating. I just know that I'm going to put all of my actual focus and attention to this thing at this time. And she came
Mm.
back to me a week later. She was like, I had to remind myself a couple times in the week, like, relax, like, you're going to get it done. And I got it done right before it was due, and it was complete, and I did a great job. I'm like, wow, how'd you feel throughout? She goes, I had to like tell myself that a couple times, but ultimately, like, I was fine. My anxiety about it went down.
So it's almost like the stories we're telling ourselves around these behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying that it's bad because maybe we've been conditioned to believe that putting something off is a
Mm-hmm.
bad thing. And I just think about like what you were sharing before about how you have these short bursts of energy. And that's just such a manifestor trait. Like we have
Yeah.
this very on off energy. And when we're in an urge or a surge of energy, we've got so much we can achieve, and it's very efficient. We can achieve a lot in a short period of time. And I think that that's where so much of our conditioning comes in to tell us that that's not a good thing, that you should be working consistently all day, or you shouldn't just want to, do something quickly and get it done. You should, take more time with it or take more care. I think about like corporate jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a TikTok yesterday. It was funny because it was like someone just sitting bored at their desk from 9 a.m. to 4:30 and then and they said something about like doing 8 hours worth of work in the last half hour
Mm-hmm.
of the day or something like that. And I think back to when I worked in a 9 to 5. I mean, it wasn't entirely 9 to 5, it was probably more 8 till 4, but same sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
um, I couldn't have the energy to work all day
To go
at
have
the
a
same
react.
thing. Oh yeah, go for it.
But I'm
I'll hop
almost
out.
stuck. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. Oh, I was just saying, like I couldn't do it. I couldn't
Yeah.
do it. And I would think it was crazy that like I could achieve what work was necessary in maybe 3 or 4 hours. And I almost felt guilty. I felt
Mm-hmm.
guilty about that because I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I wasn't doing enough. And
Mm-hmm.
I felt almost like I wasn't deserving of the level that I got to in that role, because I was kind of like, I'd moved up to a leadership role, and I felt like, am I even really deserving of this? Because I don't feel like I'm all that productive. But I am. My productivity looks different than someone who perhaps is a generator, who has a more consistent energy
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day. So I don't know, this kind of, I think brings me back to this idea of like, what is the why? Why are we doing something? What is the reason why we're doing it? Because if, regardless of what energy type you have, regardless of how you operate, how you work, how productive you are throughout a day, or what even we call productivity, how we even define that, because I think rest is productive. A lot of people wouldn't think rest is productive, right? So let's throw all of that out. What are we, what's your why? Why are you doing what it is behind it? And I kind of just lost my train of thought, but I feel like I wanted to say, no, I've lost it now. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I think it was that if we can remember why we're doing something or why we started to begin with, we don't have to worry about the outcome, but we can access this sense of determination to keep going, to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
to keep taking those small steps.
You know, it not only because I think I have that gate defined as well, the one you're talking about of the gate of drive.
The 53
4.
or 54? 54. Yeah.
Right now. 54 out of the root. Yeah. The gate of drive. I feel like when it comes to like this sense of like determination, and this the gate of drive that you spoke of, I feel as if we in some way we do feel like you and I feel a little bit more connected to this, because not only is it like activated in different areas of our chart, but also because we have a defined heart as well. And the defined heart, from what I understand, being an ego manifester, like really taking action. So tell me if this is true for you, on like, using our strategy and authority, but really taking that aligned action from places where we feel passion, we feel determined, we feel motivated, we feel like a wanting or a desire. And that's kind of like what I've been going off of. Like, and there's just some things I'm really determined about, like I can do. And I maybe have spoke about this in maybe when we were at the fifth gate, because for me, when it comes to like working out, I have a bit of a routine and a ritual with that. And I can do it. Like I can I can just do it. And I just remember I went through this phase where I was sharing a lot of my workouts on Instagram. I was sharing clips of them and stuff. And I would, get some feedback, like emojis of like clapping hands or people just cheering me on and things. Or then when in my, groups of people being reflected back, like, Rafa, you just have like, you're just so motivating. Like you can really just do these things. And for me, like, I appreciate it. Thank you for the feedback, and that reflection. But I also do the things that I do because I have a motivation behind it. Like I am so determined to wake up in the morning and to meditate. I don't know where it came from, but it came into my experience. And like, that's what I'm really like, driven by some of these things. And that I know is correct for me. So I feel like that's where like, this quality of determination, I feel like for us, it comes through because we do have defined hearts. So it's a little bit of more of a consistency with that.
The willpower. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing this a lot, like there's multiple parts of the chart that can relate to certain things. Like it's not just one gate or one energy center or one channel. It's like there's often layers upon what makes us who we are. There's the part of us that has that defined 54th gate of drive, but then also the passion of the heart and the willpower and the motivation that comes from being not only heart defined manifestors, but ego manifest. others, you know? So it's interesting. And I'm so glad that you brought up the heart as well, because he talks about
Mm-hmm.
the heart. He talks
Yeah.
about in our hearts, however, all human beings are natural rebels. We are wild creatures. We're not here on earth to have our dreams tamed, clipped, or domesticated. We're here to make magic happen, and we cannot do that unless every waking moment is directed and focused towards a single overreaching vision or ideal. So I have a question for you, and maybe we can kind of use this to wrap up the conversation today, or even something to ponder and ask our listeners, anyone listening. What would you say, and maybe you don't know for sure in this moment what that is, but what would you say your overarching ideal vision is? What is that driving force that motivates you, that determines
Mm.
that, where that determination lies?
This is going to be pretty ironic, given some of the things that I've shared with you, which I'll share with everyone, is that it's to feel good. That's my drive. My drive is to feel good, but more than that, to like feel at peace with myself, which is the signature for manifestors. But I say that because I was sharing with Hannah, and I'll leave you guys with this, is where do we actually cut ourselves off from experiencing the joy and the goodness of life? Because, you know, we've been so caught up in like having to do the work or healing this or working on that and this and that. And like when you stop for a moment and realize like how good your life is, if you truly do feel like it is good in that moment, can you fully embrace that and not cut it off, like not cut yourself off from that? So it's just, I appreciate the question, and it makes me really um just want to like open my heart more to that, to allowing the goodness in life. What about for you?
So beautiful. Well, I think also that's what you share with others, is so much of your work is about helping people to feel better, to access a greater sense of peace and connection with themselves, or connection with something greater than themselves. And so in you focusing your energy and your attention on the things that make you feel good, you're then sharing that and showing other people and demonstrating to other people that they're allowed to feel good too.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
For me, there's not one thing that just stands out in terms of like what you shared, feeling good, but I think it's a similar sort of thing. It's just like feeling a greater sense of peace, a greater sense of connection, a greater sense of purpose, feeling like I'm here doing what I came here to do, and being who I came here to be, fully expressing myself, I would say, is like my greater ideal vision. And really also being a light for others, being a demonstration for others that they can do that too, that they don't have to keep themselves small, that they don't have to follow the path that is laid out for them by society, by whoever, by anything outside of them, that they are free to create their own path in life and to do the things that light them up and to do the things that bring them joy and a sense of peace, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, I think that that is what true freedom is. It's being able to be at peace with ourselves and with life, and not be so controlled by these things outside of us, to be able to come back to ourselves and know that we have everything we need within us. I think that's like true freedom. And freedom is one of my values.
Yeah,
So, yeah, something to ponder for sure.
absolutely. So fun.
So fun. Yeah, I really love this energy. I think it's beautiful.
I do too. you know, for me, it was more fun in sharing it with you.
Mm.
Yeah. When I was reading it, I was like, okay, I hear that. I feel that. But getting into it is like the juicy part that I like.
Yeah. And I think it really shows like the human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we are still living in, for the most part, as a society in the shadow frequencies, but I think it really just shows the strength of the human spirit to keep going, to not lose sight of what's important and to keep going and to stay determined. So yeah, I love chatting about this stuff with you.
So fun.
So fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has the ninth gate, or a defined sacral, or an undefined sacral, or you don't have the ninth gate, but want to share with us any feedback you had about some of the things we talked about in today's episode, we love to hear them.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
All right,
And we'll see
everyone.
you next week.
I'll see
Gate
you
10.
next week. Yeah. Take care.
All right. Bye.